In a previous video, I showed you how to condense a large watercolor palette into a smaller, portable travel size kit by limiting the colors that would fit into a small tin. Now the question is whether those limited colors are enough to paint an actual watercolor piece. If you want to find out whether the travel palette was too small or just right, then keep on watching. Everybody, Daphne here, and welcome back to my channel. Now before we get started, check out my artwork at the galleries and social media sites next to me here on the side. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a new video. And as always, there's free comics waiting for you at the link in the description box below, so don't forget to sign up for them. So instead of creating a piece just to test out the limited colors of the travel kit, I decided to actually use the kit to create a piece that will be published in an upcoming book for a future Kickstarter. The image is for the Oswald Chronicles series by J.D. Calderon for a short story named A Country Night in New York City. I will put a link below to the Oswald Chronicles website for you to check out. I am basing this piece on an actual painting, an equestrian portrait of Don Gaspar de Guzman by Diego Velázquez, dated from 1634. Since I am not actually adept at watercolors, I figured using a piece I can follow along to as reference instead of making up something whole cloth will help make the process easier. I hope. To start, I am using Strathmore Cold Press Watercolor Paper 300 series in 9x12 size and penciling in the initial figure with a red Prismacolor Kohl Erase pencil. Before I started this piece, I watched a lot of YouTube videos about watercolor painting, and there were a lot of techniques to choose from. I decided to try just sketching loosely directly on the paper and painting directly on the sketch to see how that would work out. Now that I'm satisfied with the initial figure, I'm going to sketch in the rider figure using a blue Prismacolor Kohl Erase pencil. Using different colored pencils allows me to layer the images in a way I can see them better and not confuse anything once I start to put the details in. Depending on the complexity of the piece, I may add in more elements using other colors, but in the end, this piece was simple enough to just stick with red and blue. Now it's time to put down the base layer of the watercolors using Princeton Heritage Synthetic Sable Round Watercolor Brushes. Boy, that's a mouthful. This part I really dislike because this is where the painting starts in its ugly phase, until we get enough layers to make the piece look like something proper. The trick is not to get frustrated at this part. Just keep reminding yourself this is the base layer only, and it's only going to be temporary. As I said before, we are painting this piece with a limited color palette based on a travel kit I made in a previous video. I'll put a link above so you can check that out. We will be using the following 12 colors: cadmium red pale hue, cadmium orange, lemon yellow hue, hook green dark, emerald, blue intense, cerulean blue, purple lake, burnt umber, raw umber, Indian red, and Payne's gray. As I start painting, I already noticed that my kit isn't as convenient as I was expecting. First off, I realized that by putting the color chart in the top of the tin, I had to figure out a separate mixing surface for the paint. Since I already needed a separate container for water, I decided the lid would work fine for this purpose. Not a big deal if you think about it. You have to carry water with your portable paints anyway. At this point, I'm still trying to work out how I'm wanting the piece to look, and I regret ever saying anything about watercolors being easier to use than Copics. Had I decided to use my markers on this piece, I would have been a lot more confident on how it's looking, and would have been even more sure as to how the final piece was going to turn out. As it is right now, I'm not so sure about what I'm doing, and I'm already thinking about how I'm going to save this piece without having to start over. As I start to put in the second layer and a little bit more details, I'm feeling a little bit better about my choices. I'm beginning to see the painting begin to come together, but I'm already questioning whether I have enough colors for what I'm trying to do. Instead of worrying, I just allow the watercolors do what they are known for, and that is for their layering. Even though I am using the same green color on the tail, the dried layer looks like a different shade. I start working on the background and mix in some yellow and green to not look like I'm using the same colors everywhere. So it's obvious that the better you are at mixing paints, the more success you are going to have with a limited color palette. I'm not trying to do an exact technique copy of the Velázquez painting. Instead, using it to mark out shapes and color combos without having to think about it too much. I start adding in more details to make sure the figure doesn't disappear into the background with all the greens. At this point, I realize that my color palette really could have used white, so I break out Dr. P.H. Martin's pen white ink and start detailing the painting. So now the kit has another bottle added to it as opposed to having white already in the tin. Because I only use tape to secure the paint pans to the tin, I'll see if there is a color I can switch out and replace. Now I feel the painting needs a little pizzazz, and I start adding some details using Finetec Coliro Artist Mica watercolor paint in the metallic gold 6 color set. It is a little hard to see in the video, but the final painting will have a nice gold metallic sheen in those details when I'm done. The gold paint gave plenty of time for the watercolor to dry, so now it's time for me to start going in with my Copic Multiliner SP pens to outline the piece, mostly the main figures. Depending on what kind of watercolor paintings you want to do, this technique may come off as a cheat. But since watercolor isn't my strong suit, I decided that I was going to stick with a technique that can still work with my strengths. I figure I have plenty of time to practice doing an entire piece without having to resort to other mediums. But right now, I'm liking how the black ink looks layered on the watercolor. At this point, I decided that I was pretty much done with the watercolor portion, so the question remains, is this watercolor palette too small, or was 12 colors just enough? As I said before, if you're really good with mixing colors, the limited range shouldn't be too much of a bother for you, and I would recommend replacing one of the colors with white, which will also give you more range with mixing. Me personally, I actually prefer the original 48 pan watercolor set I pulled apart to make the mini tins. I just prefer having a larger range of color and the built-in mixing tray, as opposed to finding other things to replace that. But all in all, if you're an artist who does travel a lot, but doesn't want to carry around large palettes, then making your own mini sets would be the way to go. And how convenient of me to have a video you can watch about how to do that. And one final thought on the piece. I really think I should have gone with another layer of watercolor to make the characters stand out some more, but oh well. Next time I know. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned as much as I did in the process. I'd love for you to comment down below and tell me what you would have in your mini watercolor kit to make it better, or what you would have done with this piece if you were painting it to make it better. I'm looking forward to seeing your ideas and suggestions, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!